it's not a very theatrical album, and it's not a very theatrical sound. The lyrics aren't theatrical. There's no concept behind the record, so it's going to be nice to actually, you know, do something intimate and kind of live and very raw and fuzzy and noisy, and I think that's mostly what it'll be, noisy.
Dead! 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 Dead!
Love them or hate them, few bands define the 2000s alternative scene quite like My Chemical Romance. The band was essentially the poster child for alternative culture during their era, and grew from a humble post-hardcore act out of New Jersey in the early 2000s to ending the decade as arena-filling pop rock icons. Even bands often placed alongside them, like Fall Out Boy or Panic at the Disco, would never quite reach the same level of cultural influence that MCR had at their peak. And much of this falls on the back of the band's ever-popular frontman, Gerard Way. He was far from the only icon or influential force behind the project, but he was the face, and his face was one of the most inescapable of the era. But come 2011, this would all change. After the initial touring for the band's fourth record, Danger Days, they would kind of drop off the face of the earth, occasionally playing shows and festivals, but more or less just going dark. And while fans assumed that the band had simply stepped away to begin work on a new record, behind the scenes, years of internal tension, burnout, and creative stagnation would finally catch up with them. And for this reason, among others, the band would come to a close in 2013, giving a heartfelt goodbye after releasing their shelved album Conventional Weapons and Greatest Hits CD to bid everyone farewell. Now, for those of you who are curious, I have a whole series going into the band's history. The Danger Days video in particular has a much more thorough breakdown of what brought the end of MCR. But for this video, the important thing to note is that the band had come to an end. And with that came a lot of uncertainty as to what would come next for its members. In particular, Gerard Way. But to everyone's surprise, the wait wouldn't be long for his return.
That was tremendous stuff. Gerard Way, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Forgive me for stating the obvious here, but you appear to be an Earthling.
Hesitant Alien would be the debut project from Gerard Way as a solo artist. A bold new direction with both visuals and sound. And with this project, Gerard had essentially reinvented himself, embracing his love for Britpop and new wave music, and embarking on a journey with a David Bowie-esque flair to it all. Gone was the jet black hair and blood-soaked melancholy of his previous years, and in was the neon flare 60s sci-fi look for a project that would live up to its name and alienate much of his previous fan base. These days, the record occupies a strange place in music history, largely forgotten by the mainstream audiences, but often remembered by casual fans as little more than an odd detour in Gerard's career. But even amongst the base, the hardcore fans, it exists as a divisive leg of Gerard's career, being a bit of a love it or hate it affair during one of the darkest periods surrounding My Chemical Romance. So, today, this episode of Hidden Gems is dedicated to a record I love, and an era misunderstood by most, Hesitant Alien. An album that I think deserves far more flowers than it got, and a recognition for all of its experimentation. So, without further ado, let's talk about Hesitant Alien.
We want television bodies that we can't keep. We have battles in the dark when she falls asleep. We can
After the breakup, Gerard would famously post a monstrous twitlonger going over all of his feelings for the end and reasons why he wanted to end MCR. While fans were left shocked and confused by the sudden end to the band, for Gerard himself, the split had been a long time coming. Years of burnout and creative stagnation, and the growing pressure of carrying a project that had become far bigger than anyone originally intended for it to be, well, it finally reached its breaking point. My Chemical Romance had essentially put themselves in a bit of a corner as well. Do they return to the well of darkness and teen angst that they were famous for, or do they continue down this incredibly divisive new path that Danger Days had set them on, and double down on the bright pop-oriented look and sound that they had created? So, with the band's end, it almost acted as if it was a clean slate for each member. And each and every one of them would begin to embark on their own musical journeys following the breakup. Though Gerard took a very different path. Rather than immediately stepping into a new project or trying to build a new band for himself, he would instead largely vanish from public view altogether. And honestly, this makes a lot of sense. While at the time fans were freaking out and worried, in reality, Gerard had already openly spoken about the mental and physical toll the band had taken on him for years. The exhausting touring cycles and the pressure to constantly outdo the impossible expectations set by records like Black Parade, as well as the uncomfortable reality that somewhere along the way, the very thing that he had built out of passion with his friends had slowly started becoming something that he no longer fully recognized. And that's what makes this next chapter so fascinating. Gerard didn't seem interested in rebuilding what had been lost. There was never an attempt to recreate My Chemical Romance or an effort to chase the same sound or aesthetic or even the same audience that had spent years turning him into an icon. Rather, that year was spent building something entirely new. So once Gerard came back into the limelight, announcing a new single and dropping it online, it would both act as a breath of life and the first of many things that would begin to alienate his fan base. Now, this project was subject to a lot of buzzwords when it first got announced, and everyone finally got a taste of the new music. Fans had a mixed reaction to Action Cat upon release, with Gerard stans, of course, eating it up, and many others having mixed to lukewarm feelings on the whole thing. In hindsight, Action Cat isn't all that far off from what we could have heard on Danger Days, but due to the emotions and uncertainty surrounding MCR's breakup, it's easy to see why people would be so adverse. It wasn't as poppy or bright as Danger Days, but it also wasn't as heavy or dark as MCR's previous material. It existed in a strange middle ground, with a returning sense of melancholy, but this time in a very different form than what we heard previously. And that's not even to mention the visuals that would start appearing online, which would only further the overall alienation of the audience. Again, like Danger Days, it was pulling from retro sci-fi aesthetics, but here it was from an even more obscure place. The bright colors were not as neon and bubblegum as the more Super Sentai Killjoy stuff. Rather, Gerard was pulling visual inspiration from 60s and 70s British television, like UFO or even some old Doctor Who. I'm not sure if he ever acknowledged that publicly, but you can see it just by a quick visual comparison here. And when the second single and first music video finally dropped, No Shows, it would cement the official look and sound of the album. Right off the bat, it's obvious that the new sound is rooted in a retro rock frame. But rather than the traditional 80s cock rock or 70s Led Zeppelin stuff that hipsters were deep into at the time, Gerard was taking some very deep inspirations from a few specific sounds of rock music. It was the culmination of David Bowie's post-glam, pre-80s era sound, old garage and alternative rock stuff like Dinosaur Jr., and the one that people would latch onto the most, Britpop. The sound of it is rooted in a lot in shoegaze, also Britpop. The whole thing largely feels like a British album. I was going for a lot of things that were completely new to me. Even the way we attacked the vocals and tried to make them sound was very different from the ways I had ever been recorded. And there it is, that word, Britpop. A phrase that would come to be the marketing gold and buzzword that would swarm the record. Now, I don't think I need to explain what shoegaze, or showgaze as I like to call it because it pisses off you fucking dorks, but the genre is more so an afterthought on this record. Britpop really is the main stylistic influence here. So for the majority of you who aren't familiar with that term, let's take a bit of a detour here. Britpop was a 90s movement from, you guessed it, the UK, where a slew of bands would return to classic British rock like the Beatles and take the overall British sound and fuse it with contemporary alternative rock, defined by catchy hooks and choruses, simple song structures, and lighter lyrical themes.
Like the jungle, so call the police. I'm following the herd.
There was a lot of bands that came out of this era, but the two most popular would definitely be Blur and Oasis. It was essentially the UK's answer to grunge. In the early 90s, American rock had been overtaken by the grunge wave thanks to Nirvana and many bands who would follow and usher in an era defined by darker, heavier, and more obtuse music overall. There would still be hooks, but rarely any light or pop in the mix. One would just need to throw on some Alice in Chains to understand this era. So if we go across the pond over to Bongland, UK, the Brits would counter. And while it's not nearly as fondly remembered or iconic as the grunge wave was, it would leave its mark. And for Gerard, this would be the centerpiece of his new direction. I was able to bring out my Britpop influences tremendously this time. That was truly amazing for me. I was really able to draw out the stuff I loved about Supergrass, the stuff I loved about Blur, and the stuff I loved about Pulp, especially This Is Hardcore. The stuff I loved about Lush, Elastica, it's all in there. Even older stuff like Wire and Gang of Four. That stuff is all in there.
Would you mind reciting some of the lyrics for us right now?
Been weeks I've been living, and your smiles are giving me all types of trouble. Weak knees I've been given, and those nights are making me starstruck and metal. Stay free, don't go. We don't need no shows.
Keep going.
Try to be living as your vice, and can you be my type? 'Cause we need to be given a good life, and can I be your type of metal? Stay free, don't go. We don't need no shows.
So with all that build-up in such a short span of time, Gerard had essentially created a ticking time bomb out of his new record. An album shrouded in expectations both set by his past work that fans wanted more of, and curiosity from those who saw the writing on the wall from the few singles and promo that we got, that whatever was coming was something entirely new. And come September 2014, Hesitant Alien would release, and with it, all expectations would be blown out of the water. Starting with the track The Bureau, the record instantly creates tension. Right off the bat, this introduction song gives a clear signal to what the album is aiming for. The production and songwriting have a distinctly old sound to it, showing off the album's more 60s rock influence. And this is important, because with the previous tracks that we heard, Action Cat and No Shows, there were inklings of that tone there, but buried in the Britpop sound. But they didn't nearly have as much of that old school sound present as there is here. This is doubled down on the album's fourth track, Brother. A heartfelt anthem about struggling with temptation and addiction. The track cements a statement that we heard towards the beginning of the video. This isn't a high-concept record like what Gerard's material was before, and what he had been producing for upwards of a decade by this point. Rather, much of Hesitant Alien's lyrics strike a much more personal note. If we refer back to the lyrics of No Shows, they play into this as well, talking about not fitting in, yet not needing the world's validation. And while this might be some familiar territory, where it strikes differently from many of the self-worth ballads of MCR's catalog, No Shows instead is more pointed at Gerard himself. The message with No Shows is not needing to fit in order to belong to something. You don't need the lights, you don't need the stage, you don't need the band playing in front of you. You just need another person and the connection you have with them. Many of the lyrics on the record are a reflection and exploration of Gerard's emotions, insights, and struggles after nearly 15 years being a rock icon, dealing with fame, burnout, addiction, relationships, and, as this album implies, alienation. And as you can hear, this comes through on just about every song. And even the older sounding production plays into this as well. It doesn't sound fresh and it doesn't sound super polished. The production is intentionally old and even a bit tired in its tone, both to stylistically fit the aesthetic, but also to reflect the album's lyrics, like an old dog defying the metaphor and learning some new tricks. And speaking of tricks, there's another key element to the album sound that doesn't get mentioned very often. While the media and, well, Gerard himself put their eggs in the whole Britpop basket, the core genre that the record actually plays with, well, it's... Cheap Trick is a band that almost always comes to mind when I hear this album. And the power pop sound itself is the one that this album truly worships. Whether it's accidental as just the combination of pop, hard rock, and Britpop naturally culminates there, or this was the genre Gerard himself was listening to the most when making Hesitant Alien, it doesn't matter, because it's what defines the album. The record is chock full of these sorts of tracks, fusing the emotional and heartfelt lyrics that defined My Chemical Romance's work, but distilled into a much more personal affair here, using the 60s sci-fi aesthetic and pop-oriented classic rock sound of the record to mask the very somber and melancholic tone of the lyrics. Hesitant Alien is an album defined not by the contradictions in its sad lyrical themes and the bright musical tones that it has, rather it's a complementary affair, where these two culminate in an album that lives up to its name. It embraces many of Gerard's more muted musical influences, allowing him to spread his wings and experiment, alienating much of his previous fan base and the very scene that held him so high for so long. But it's that pop blend, that heavy emphasis on aesthetics, that acts as the hesitation, a shield for the very personal and vulnerable lyrical content that Gerard therapeutically sings all across the album.
Great stuff. Gerard, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back.
Hesitant Alien would be supported with more media surrounding it, press and musical tours, and overall a big push to make this Gerard's main act. And while the fanfare and reception would mostly be positive and enthusiastic, The reality was, this wasn't a mainstream success. Far from a failure or a project fully falling under everyone's radar, but the cult status would be about as far as it went. Gerard would follow up the record with a handful of singles, keeping in time with the sound and visual inspiration. Baby You're a Haunted House being the biggest, mostly due to the music video and featuring Mikey Way on bass, though it would be the last hurrah for the project at large after 2016. After this, Gerard would shift his focus almost entirely on his work as a comic writer, getting his own imprint with DC Comics titled Young Animal, and only a few short years later, getting his original comic series Umbrella Academy adapted into a Netflix series. It wouldn't be until 2019, when My Chemical Romance would reunite, that music would come back into the picture as a mainstay. Now, that's not to ignore the handful of singles that Gerard has released in that time, but these mostly exist as collaboration tracks divorced from his previous solo act persona. Hesitant Alien has since fallen fully into cult status, a strange stop on the road ignored by the mainstream, and to this day divisive among fans themselves. But for me, the record sits as a masterpiece. It's an album that proved that not only could Gerard do it on his own, but he could create something truly moving. For all of its odd choices and stylistic limitations when compared to MCR, Hesitant Alien stands on its own. An amazing album, and one that I think deserves to be remembered, truly living up to the moniker of a misunderstood masterpiece. Oh hey, it's that time. Well everyone, this is the Wall of Shame. The list of names of the people who pay me on Patreon and Ko-fi because they want to see more content, or I don't know, maybe they take pity on me. Regardless, I can't thank them for their support enough, and if you want to take some pity on me or you want some more content and more videos, well, you know where to go to support me. Links are in my description. And yeah, I can't thank you enough for your support. I hope you guys enjoyed the Hesitant Alien video. Funny enough, this has actually been on my hit list longer than the actual My Chemical Romance series was. But I just kind of held off on it because I didn't know how I wanted to attack it, and the Hidden Gems kind of format really kind of gave me a way to do it, because I didn't want to focus on just all of Gerard's personal stuff, as well as I didn't want to only clinically talk about the music. So doing that huge MCR series where I kind of did both gave enough context to where this video can kind of just stand on its own. And yeah, so for all the returning MCR fans that haven't been here in a hot minute, because it's been a little over a year since I ended that series, hey guys, good to see you again. And for just all of my fans that are here, because you watch every video, hey, keep doing what you're doing. Watching my videos makes you a better person, and you know it. But with all that being said, I have a lot more videos in the works. Obviously, I've always got a bunch. Anyone on Patreon probably sees those giant lists of videos that I'll put up, or like thumbnails I'm working on. All of those will see their day. Trust me, I'm just getting my life together. So if things take a little longer than normal, well, you know what's going on. But anyway, subscribe, support me on Patreon, follow me on Twitter. Join the Discord server if you want to yap with me, or be a part of my community. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.